Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Happy Hour brought to you by NAAP. We are the National Association of Adoptees and Parents, where it is our mission to unify the adoption community and elevate our diverse voices through education, awareness, and healing and connections. We are so glad to have all of you with us tonight. It's just really exciting to have all of you, again, our California friends. It's nice to, with the time difference, I know it's really hard to make it. So we're glad to see you and all of you. We appreciate you coming tonight. If I notice you're already starting to go in the chat room, everybody just go ahead and show the love to Janine and Jenette and let them know what state or you're watching from or country. And we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm Marcie Keithley. I know most of you here this evening. There's some new faces here that I don't know. So I'm your host for the evening, along with Jennifer Falsing and Beth Sturry in the Zoom room. They're fellow board members. Do we have anybody else with us this evening? Moses is here. Moses?
Where are you?
Remember? Yeah.
Where are you hiding?
Let's see who else is with us. Okay, that's all we have with us this evening. Okay, before I introduce our spotlight guest this evening, Jennifer, I know we've got a little disclaimer. Okay, we want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, please place yourself on mute. If you do have a question, raise your virtual hand. You're welcome to post questions or comments in the chat room at any time. Jennifer and Beth will assist with monitoring those. This is a public meeting with no guarantee that information or identity is confidential. Portions of this event are recorded and shared on our YouTube channel. If you're experiencing a serious mental health event or suicidal thought, please contact a licensed professional or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So with that, I would like to go ahead and introduce our special guest with us this evening. Dr. Janine, I want to pronounce it right.
All right.
Myung Ja. She's authored numerous books on the topic of adoption, including The Search for Mother Missing and Adoption, What You Should Know, and Orphans Research, and curated Adoptionland from Orphans to Activists. Her twin sister Janette is a Reiki Master, certified life coach, and has worked in the occupational therapy profession for more than 25 years. She is an activist for human rights and an advocate for record access for all adopted people. Also known as the Vance Twins, they started Adoption Truth and Transparency Worldwide Information Network in November of 2011. This social media group on Facebook has grown into a place for adopted people and families separated by adoption to connect and discuss pertinent adoption issues. The Vance Twins serve as co-directors for the U.S. on fundraising and awareness for Against Child Trafficking. They are currently planning the Adoption Trafficking Awareness Symposium to take place in Washington State on June 18th in 2022. Please join me in welcoming the Vance Twins.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
We're so glad to have both of you this evening.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
You're quite welcome. So let's learn all about the two of you.
Okay, we'll try.
There's a lot.
We have a lot of baggage. Well, okay, so we'll start kind of from our childhood. We were adopted from Seoul, South Korea in 1972 by American family in Washington State. And you can say anything. You can interrupt me if you want.
Okay, I have permission to interrupt, so that's cool.
We have two older brothers. Our parents, two normal parents, all American parents. So yeah, we were 6 months old, and I started writing what's called Americanized 72, a Generation X coming of age and identity adoption story in 1997 when our adoptive mother passed away from cancer. So it was like the kind of maybe 9 months after she had passed away. And
I think that you started writing more as like a healing
or like therapy, just trying to figure things out, you know, and like, yeah, just trying to figure things out, I think.
And at that time, she joined a writing group, and they would exchange chapters and their manuscripts, and she gave it to one of the members that happened to be an editor, and she read the manuscript and said, wow, you have an amazing story, but there's a lot of anger in there.
Actually, there was nothing about my adoptive mother in there. It was just focused on my adoptive father, who I had a good relationship with, a friendship relationship. So during our childhood, our dad had a traumatic brain injury in 1984, and he was flying off Dog Mountain. I don't know if you guys know what hang gliding is, but it's the wings with the
glider.
And then he forgot to put the wing bolts on, so it collapsed in midair, and then it fell 100 feet into a tree and through the tree. And he was wearing a motorcycle helmet instead of a proper
hang gliding
flying helmet. So he, had a traumatic brain injury and became physically disabled. And our mom was unable to take care of him because it was trauma on the whole family. It was a shock. It was a surprise, and prior to that, Dad was he
was an engineer for Boeing, and he was pretty high up there with his career, and
like a respected, type
he's working in black box and top secret stuff. And then he was super involved in the church as a youth group leader and choir director.
So to go from that to not even knowing how to feed yourself anymore or dress and, that sort of stuff. My sister and I kind of took over caregiving for him since Mom was unable to really cope with everything. Plus, we lived in a 4,000 square foot house that he had started building in 1950 and never finished because our mom was a hoarder and filled it up with all her stuff. After the accident, all through junior high and high school, we would help him before and after school to, eat, dress, groom,
go to the bathroom.
Yeah. And help him with his therapy. He started physical, occupational,
speech therapy.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why Jenette ended up going to college for
OT. So
yeah. And
so after Mom passed away, Janine started writing as kind of a therapy. There were a lot of hardships with our relationship with our adoptive mother because she could not really accept us. She kind of had a undiagnosed mental illness after I studied mental health. And as like paranoid personality disorder. And so she was paranoid of my sister and I, and she was jealous. So it was very challenging. She when we were younger, she would lock up the food from us and withhold things from us. So kind of our survival was us together trying to survive our household. And so anyways, her writing stemmed from that.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason. I was just trying to figure things out after she had passed away. And then in the story, in the book, there's a few surprises. We find out that our brother is domestically adopted. When he was, we found out right before Mom passed away, we found out, and then right after she passed away, we found out that we weren't US citizens. They never naturalized us. So we were at risk of deportation. And we did get that straightened out. We had to, you know, apply and
Take the test, study history.
Yeah. And I remember during the interview when the officer had asked if we had ever, or if I had ever voted, because everything was separate. And fortunately I hadn't, because if I did, then it was grounds for deportation. And I could have been, you know, sent back. And at that time when we were 25, we didn't even know where Korea was. We didn't know that we were Korean, you know, we didn't know anything about Korea. So that's kind of what Americanized is all about. There's a few surprises. Like say one thing, after mom had passed away, she comes back to us through a psychic and we have a conversation. And so there's little surprises along the way, I think. It's also kind of our spiritual evolution or process of us getting kicked out of the church because we read the wrong book. And then how we kind of expanded our belief system to include Eastern philosophy and other types of schools of thought that became a real interest to us. And it was actually a blessing in disguise to be kicked out of the church, I think. So then when I started looking at adoption,
so that
in 2004, there was a 50-year anniversary gathering of intercountry adoption. And so there's about 200, okay, stop that, Jenette. There's about 200,000 to 250,000 Korean-born adoptees. Out of that big pool of adoptees, about 450 traveled back to Seoul to celebrate and contemplate and think about adoption. And during this time, there were some things that we learned that were also shocking. One thing is that a lot of the adoptees aren't orphans. You know, you always see these advertisements of children that are starving and all that, but really going back to Korea 50 years after it was set up, a lot of the adoptees actually found their birth families who were waiting for them to come back. And so from me, looking at adoption from a person that was now outside of Christianity, it gave me a whole new lens. And after I got back from Korea, I read like Bertha Holt's memoir, and I realized, wow, the way that the children were obtained to me was not ethical. And so it made me question the ethics and morals of adoption agencies and how they worked. And it reminded me of how, you know, or it made me disapprove of the practices. And then so I started putting together, and then we started the group, the
Adoption Truth and
because we wanted to know what were the moms thinking, what's the mom side of everything? Like,
yeah, so I decided to start a Facebook group, Adoption Truth and Transparency Worldwide Network. And at that time, it was without the information in there. But as Janine kept writing and researching, then I said, you know what, we gotta change this and add in information. But she was like, no, it's gonna make it way too long. But I was like, no, look at the acronym, it has twin in it. So we thought it was a perfect thing.
It just made sense.
It's a great way, because I was so frustrated with the forums that I was in, trying to talk from like, okay, so I'm a mother myself of 3, and I just know that you can't just relinquish a child. There's something behind all of this. There's coercion, there's manipulation,
there's the wrong type of counseling. It's like counseling that does not uplift and empower, but automatically assumes that the mother is this or that, and then it places a stigma on the mother.
So with this group, we decided to invite the mothers, and we found Valerie Andrews that is
the executive director
of Origins, and
Canada.
So she has done a lot of writing, and there's like 300,000 or 400,000 mothers that had their
in Canada
that had their children taken from them, and so I knew, okay, this is what's going on in Korea too. So I wanted to connect with these mothers. I knew that I would never be able to speak to my Korean mother, and if I did by chance ever find her, I would not be able to communicate with her in a very clear way to find out what really happened. I mean, so this is a way that these mothers can communicate to adopted people, especially, from Korea, that we can hear through these mothers from Canada, the mothers from Korea. So in essence, they're really like channeling the mothers from Korea to be able to communicate to us. And we started before too with adoptive parents, with
and it was a public group, so it was very chaotic.
Lots of
fighting, a lot of verbally attacking each other.
So we decided to take the adoptive parents out, because we have heard their voice for all of our growing up. We already know their thoughts. We already know what they're going to say to us. We don't need to really hear that.
And plus there's thousands of other groups with adoptive parents. And I noticed too that they tend to be the ones to snuff us out, to say, be happy, calling us bitter or
angry,
ungrateful. And we would get like verbally attacked just because we want to express ourselves.
And the mothers wanted to express themselves, because for so long they were suppressed also.
And sharing information without being interrupted by, you should do this, you should think that. And then, so that's how Adoption, Truth and Transparency became families who were separated by adoption versus families created by adoption. And that's why we wanted to focus on that instead of, the mainstream, what's already out there, what's loud and proud. And then we did a call for submissions. We started Adoptionland, and we ended up getting numerous. Numerous.
Okay, I have to do this. I have to do this.
Narratives from adoptees and parents all over the world. So there's, people from every continent who shared their little essay about their adoption experience. And we found out that adoption has actually touched pretty much every single country out there. It's a child welfare system that's very profitable, and it's, every nation has been touched by or tinged by international adoption. So I kind of wanted to know more after that. After just the personal stories, I wanted to know, how did this occur? And so that's when I started my research and into who are the main perpetrators of adoption, I guess. And I discovered that, the organized version of adoption started in Europe, mainly by the Catholic Church in the 1600s, and then spread to America by the Protestant Church starting in, say, the 1850s or 1800s, and then it spread to Asia. And I'll tell you later, but it spread to Asia in 1950. And then now, obviously, we see Africa as the trending nation or trending continent from which to, obtain children. So it went from orphanship. So I divided the book into 4 sections, starting from Europe, orphan ships, and then in America, orphan trains, and then Asia, orphan planes, and to Africa, which is now orphan trafficking.
So that's
the history
Adoption
book.
History 101.
And it's also available as Adoption: What You Should Know. But that book I think it gives people a nice overview of the whole landscape, whereas Adoptionland kind of gives more of a deep dive into the psyche and the family and how adoption affects the person, and their life on a very personal level. And I also put together, or we did, the Unknown Culture Club, which is another anthology, but it just is focused on Korean-born adoptees. The Unknown Culture Club, Korean adoptees then and now. Because adoption from there started in 1954. And then I put together a few other books, but they're not published. And I'm thinking maybe I will adapt them to a documentary or something that goes into the history of adoption from Korea. And I studied Jim Jones. I don't know if you know that he was an adoptive father of numerous children of color. He had 3 adoptees from Korea. And one of them survived, one of the female adoptees survived the Jonestown massacre when she refused to go to Jonestown. And I have the FBI phone call transcript and recording of her telling her mom, nope, I'm not going to Jonestown. So she kind of saved herself from the massacre. So I kind of feel she's a hero for saying no. And interestingly enough, the first Korean girl that they adopted had passed away or died in a car accident early on. That was suspected to have been planned by Jim Jones, but there's no proof of that, with all the investigations that went on. Oh, and then another thing too is they actually, Jim Jones and his wife actually obtained the kids on a stage that was televised or by satellite to all the congregations. They're like congregations of the various denominations of the church that he belonged to, because he was a minister as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Does anyone have any questions? So you can kind of, if you want to stick a question, I can't see the chat. So if you have a question, go ahead and stick it in the chat and we can get to it later if you want.
I do have a question that came in to me directly.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. Where did it go? It was about discrimination. Do you believe adoptees are discriminated? What's your view on that?
What was that again?
Discrimination, if we're
Discrimination, or adoptees discriminated?
I think we are. I think that when we try to speak out, we're snuffed out very quickly because of the you should be grateful mentality. They don't even give us a chance to speak out.
we're not allowed to complain. we're supposed to accept our adoption
as kind of like what the industry wants us to be. I know that when we were children and we were like 4 or 5 years, 5, 6, anyways, we were young children, and my mom made my sister and I dress up in rags and walk in front of the church up to the front where the pastor was
and beg for money
for the offerings, you know, giving a note to the pastor because
saying there's starving children in the world. Donate now.
And I remember, why do we have to do this? Like, why can't Mike or David, you know, our older brothers, why can't they do this? I mean, but because we were of color, coming from that horrible country
have a
of
bigger,
Korea,
profound effect on the congregation.
and then afterwards, my mom was so ecstatic because we brought in the most donations for that month or whatever. But
so yeah, it's like we get used for things. We get used for fundraising. When we went to Korea, they wanted us to go to the unwed mothers' homes and counsel the moms and tell them adoption is great. We had a wonderful life. We had a cosmopolitan life in America. You really should give your child up for adoption.
I mean, look at how they thrived in America. And that's what they want to, that's how they use manipulation to these women in Korea, instead of, you know, encouraging them, saying you can be a mom to your child.
Because every mother, it doesn't matter what country you're from, when you become pregnant, it's very scary. You don't know, you know, if you're going to, I mean,
you're unsure of providing.
Yeah, you have self-doubt. And, you know, we became mothers pretty young. So we know all about the self-doubt and everything. In fact, when my sister became pregnant,
I was 18 when I had my son, and my adopted mother wanted me to relinquish him or give him up for adoption, and didn't do anything to support, but I refused, and she kicked me out of the house. And you know, you just had to learn how to survive, basically. But it's scary when you don't have any support around you. The reason why I have survived adoption is because I have my twin sister. If I did not have her, I don't think I could be strong and to be able to keep my child, because she was there to, you know, be the helper.
And I personally blame the church. So I'm not a fan of organized religion. I believe that God is inside, and we all should have the freedom to believe whatever we want or not believe if we don't want. You know, we shouldn't be forced and coerced into a certain school of thought. So I believe that a lot of mothers have been shamed and blamed
and the church.
And I hope that, you know, maybe with giving more information out there, that we can stop that and instead empower the mother to feel confident when, you know, there's a surprise pregnancy, because almost every pregnancy
is a surprise.
At least ours were.
Yeah. We have 5 kids together.
Yeah, I have 2 daughters, and
I have 2 daughters and 1 son. So
yeah. And so the discrimination is not just
with adoptees, it's with mothers. I mean,
it's with mothers, and it's in the West too. It's not just in the East, it's in the West, and
it's all over.
And it's I think it's perpetrated by religion, the wrong type of religious counseling.
And I believe it's almost like a violation of women's rights. I mean, it is a violation of women's rights when they are pressuring the mother so badly then
that the mother gives up on herself, and it's exploitation. It's using somebody else for somebody else's benefit.
Anyways, I hope we answered that question.
I think so. I think you have a lot of shaking heads there. So, and I know there's plenty of moms that are on here this evening that I know their stories as well, and they were definitely preyed upon. On several occasions. So, yeah. Robin Davis has her hand up. She has a question.
Oh, okay.
Robin, will you take yourself off of mute, please?
My question is different than what we started on. I just want to reiterate, I agree with everything you said. It's not always religion though. I got pregnant at 16. I'd be curious to find out how many adoptees got pregnant early. I don't know that they've ever done that study. I don't think they do a lot of studies about adoptees because I don't think they want to find out, or if they do those studies. I have a book, I worked in a crisis mental facility, and the administrator was an adoptive father, and he did a thesis on adoption and addiction because, there was, this 1994, he referenced other reports back to 1985, and I don't think those reports are readily available. I don't think people want to know. We're 4 times more likely to commit suicide. I don't think people want to know the statistics about us, so I don't think that that's done. But anyway, my adopted mother pressured me to give my child up for adoption. And when I wouldn't do that, after a year of pressure, she contacted CPS, tried to have my child taken away from me. I didn't have a twin sister. I wish I had. Somehow I just cut my adoptive parents out of my life for 6 or 7 years, had no contact with them at all, and managed to keep my child. And I don't know, I guess I'm stubborn. But I can understand everything you're saying there. I was wondering, since you found out you were Korean, have you reconnected somehow with that culture, that history in your everyday life, or is that still something that you feel somewhat disconnected from?
We did go back to Korea maybe 3 or 4 times since 2004. We eat Korean food every once in a while. I know how to kimchi. I eat one. There's like 2 or 3 dishes that I like. We actually live in a community of a pretty big Korean American community. Although we're not involved in it, we live amongst it.
We like to go to H Mart. I mean, we're kind of like foreigners in Korea or
town.
Yeah. And then when going to Korea, I felt it's so weird. You feel out of place, but then you feel in place too. It's just really confusing. It's like
it's like being here in America. Like sometimes you feel in place, and then other times you don't.
But the most frustrating thing is not being able to speak Korean, because you just don't have that connection with what language can do for people. And when at work, since I do work in a town, but there is a big Korean community, I'd get patients that would be Korean and their family members would come and visit. And I had this feeling of jealousy, like, why can they have their family, their mother, their father, their grandparent, but I can't? And how come I can't know my real, and I call them my real parents? Why can't I know them? Like, why can't I know my own parents? It just sucks. And why can't I know my other siblings or nieces or nephews? So, people think that adoption, well, they
only see the little tiny very beginning when the child is passed to the new adoptive family, but they don't see the entire rest of the story.
Well, they don't see what you give up in exchange. They don't see what you lost. in exchange, and they don't seem to want to acknowledge
They never
that
want to
all that you
acknowledge.
lost in exchange. I didn't find out till I was 23 when I found my real mom that I was half Dutch. And, you know, I'm not going to say that it's the same as Korean and, you know, coming from a half continent away. My biological father was from Holland, Michigan, so it's a little closer. They still speak English there. But, and I have never really fully reconnected with my Dutch roots. And I have a half sibling who's not half Dutch. And he was telling me last summer that my mother, who is my dad who's Dutch. And so my mother took him to Holland, Michigan, and he got to go walk in they have a tulip festival every year, and he got to walk in the tulip festival parade and wear the Dutch shoes and all that. I was jealous. As he's telling me that. It's like, that should have been me, because I'm the one that's half Dutch, not you.
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, I can identify.
So, yeah, that's why I have not really like fully reconnected with my Dutch. I know that there's recipes I probably should learn. There's things like that. I would love to go back to Holland, Michigan and go to the Tulip Festival. I have a half sibling who lives there, who she is half Dutch also. So there's, that's what I just wonder, because there's that whole culture, and I imagine it's a lot to be a part of, or reconnect with, that you lost with that move across the ocean.
Yep.
So thank you for sharing your story. It's a lot to take in.
Thanks for listening. Yeah, and being here. Speaking of like surveys and how there aren't surveys out there, really, I did put out, because I was very curious, I initiated a survey myself. It's a very small survey, and I think it's on the adoptiontruth.org website, or at the footer of adoptionhistory.org. But my survey that I'm doing, it's called Only in Adoption, and it talks about the issues that adopted people have, that only adopted people have. And then I asked a few questions about if adopted people could have access to their,
records.
Yeah, so a small pool of participants took, and I'm not done, it's an ongoing survey for adopted people. And at this point, according to the results, I'll just name off a few. 100% of the respondents believe that adopted people should have the right to search for their biological families if they so wish. 100% respondents believe that the adopted person should be given the opportunity to be informed and also sign the adoption contract based on their own interest in the matter. 100% of the respondents believe that we should be given access to our adoption documents and original birth certificates when we request them from the adoption agencies, because when we went back to Korea, they played games with us. And I've heard that even happens over here in the US, and that only 10 states out of 50 states are like you can obtain certain documents. And 100% of the respondents surveyed believe that information on their biological family's existence would have prompted them to wonder about their biological family or look for them. So because we're told we're orphans, we believe this thing that our biological families don't even exist. So why look for something that doesn't exist? And to me, that's a huge deception, to be told that you're an orphan all through your childhood, and then find out into adulthood that, oh, families exist. In fact, a family over there has been searching for you or waiting for your return since what? Since you
were
left,
born.
since you left. I mean, to me, that's a deception. And to have adoption agencies actually, have these catalogs of kids, that are waiting to be adopted. I mean, to me, that's unethical. Or private photo listings, that to me leads to, things that are just can lead to horrible things, and they have. So when we started Adoption Truth and Transparency, we became friends with the people at Against Child Trafficking. The lead executive director is adopted from India to Germany, and he started talking about child rights and how mothers have been manipulated and tricked in India, and their fight for the return of their children. Some children were even kidnapped off the streets, but because they were adopted overseas, it's considered legal, and the children, it's considered like they should actually stay in their adoptive country because they're living a wonderful life. Don't disturb them, don't, let them know the truth about their origin. So the problem has really expanded and exploded into something that has been unmanageable, I guess, for, and it's been hidden. So not many people know that this problem has even, occurred.
And it's impossible to fight it. It's so hard because you try to speak up and you're just getting knocked down. If
you give information on it, then all of a sudden you're the bad guy. All of a sudden you're ungrateful. All of a sudden you are anti-adoption, anti-God, anti-Christian. And those are things that we've been called.
Mm-hmm.
My pink book, My Search for Mother Missing, they're calling me bitter. I spew bitterness in my books. Dishonest journalism, communism. I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm ungrateful. I'm angry. Those are the words that describe the books that
these are from reviews from people that are not informed of what's going on. And so
and they'll take one little portion of my book, and then they will all of a sudden, I'm the enemy just because I'm not a certain religion
or color or any of.
But if, like, say, sometimes if my adoptive father said something, then, oh yeah, so I guess that's where the racism fits in, where if I say anything about adoption, if I say, let's take a look at this is what's happening, then all of a sudden I'm ungrateful. But if my adoptive father says something, then
they take him serious.
It's like, oh, wow, tell me more, so that's, I think, where most of the discrimination occurs. But anyway, so we we're working with Against Child Trafficking, and also the team at Against Child Trafficking. They have been through so much
bullying and hate. It's hard for them to fight too. So
and they fight at the lowest levels, on the highest levels, and the highest levels. Because the adoption lobby and the special interest groups and everything, they
want to see adoption continue, but they don't want to look at what's behind the curtain, what's really going on behind the curtain that is causing a lot of legal corruption, basically.
Yeah, so that's what we mean when we say we have a lot of baggage.
Okay, we've got, can I interject here for a second?
Yeah.
Uh, We do have a question about the symposium.
Okay.
They're interested in details about this conference, if you could. speak a
Yeah,
little
so
to that.
it's a one-day symposium at this at the planning stages so far. Right now, it'll be like an educational series. We'll have
We have a few surprise speakers.
Yeah.
We locked in the building, the Washington State History Museum. It's in Tacoma, Washington. And
it's a really nice, intimate space.
it's beautiful. It's exciting. June 18th, save the date. If we can raise enough funds, we'd love to have it a 2-day event. But the location is amazing. The people that get tickets, they'll be able to go to other museums also in the area. But
Yeah.
if you guys, anybody, or if you know anyone that would like to be on the panel, because we're
Or
going to
volunteer.
we'll need people to help with selling tickets also, because we really want this a huge success. It's really
And
important.
we're trying to raise some funds to be able to fly in the lead investigator into adoptions, corrupt adoptions, who works on the field in India and
other speakers too.
Ethiopia.
So
But then there's also going to be, so it's going to be kind of like my book, Adoption History 101, coming alive. We're going to talk about how children were relinquished. We're in, various countries. We're going to talk about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child versus the Hague Adoption Convention. We're going to talk about the aftermath of adoption. We're going to talk about suicide amongst adoptees.
We're going to also have some mothers speak too about what happened to them and how their child, how they were groomed.
And then adoptees, some of the additional burdens that adopted people have. So it'll be the full spectrum of adoption instead of the little tiny, tidbit that is out there in the mainstream.
At this point, will there be a virtual attendance option?
We're not sure yet. I mean, I did say yes to one person who had asked, but then we have to do a lot of,
we have to build a bigger team, I think, to have all of these little components come together. So if, people, if they have a strength that they would like to use to help us with, putting this all together, so we can have all of these different components, have a successful symposium, then definitely contact us.
There is a website, it's it's againstchildtraffickingusa.org. So you can fill out the form there, and then there's something on adoptionhistory.org. And then Jenette has a fundraising page on Facebook.
That's going until the end of December. And then I'm thinking in spring, I'll lead a online auction in the Adoption Truth and Transparency Worldwide Information Network in that forum, the Facebook group. So people will be able to auction off either their books or tickets to whatever they have, like Brian, your show. Or little items from different countries. It's going to be a worldwide auction. So just make sure it's small, because
and easy to mail.
Easy to mail, because then how we set it up is we run it for a few weeks, whatever we decide to run it for, and then people are bidding on it. through the forum. And then when it's the deadline of when it stops, then the last person that bid will win that item. And then and then the person that has the item, they'll mail it out to the winning bidder. So it's super fun. And it's going to be a great way for us all to interact, get to know each other, and be able to raise funds for the symposium. So that's going to be like in the early springtime. So look for that.
The main question that will be answered in the symposium is, what is adoption trafficking? Because most people don't know that it even exists. And because people don't know that it exists, then it's really difficult to raise funds to actually fight it, to stop it. And so there'll be several people to kind of answer exactly what that is. Are there any other questions?
I have one. Okay, the picture that you sent in shows the two of you being interviewed.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah,
Where
so with Janine's book, the first book, she was invited to the Northwest Afternoon Show to speak.
Stop pointing at me.
I gotta lock my hands and fold them. Anyway, so yeah, so when she started writing, I had no idea she was even writing. Like, I didn't know. I was busy at work doing my thing. And all of a sudden she tells me, we're going to be on this show, the Northwest Afternoon Show, which was a local show in Seattle. And I have to show up, and
she didn't know what we were talking about.
Yeah, I was like speechless. I mean, I was speechless because
I think, how old were we? Like 27, I think. It was scary.
It was like when it's her first being in public, being interviewed.
And everybody knows who's a writer, you know, that it's really a private, silent thing. Like, you don't really,
she's not used to being out in public at all.
Yeah. So, but it ended up being successful, and we had a good interview, and
she talked the whole time, and then I maybe had one sentence at the end.
She nodded and said, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so we used that placard or the photo to hopefully, we had a friend that translated in Korean on top. We're looking for our Korean parents. So hopefully if that circulates around, our parents will recognize us. Who knows? It might be a reunion happening.
Yep.
Okay, Kelly Layton, she has her hand up. Kelly, would you please take yourself off mute?
I just wanted to say, I think this is great work that you're doing, raising awareness about the crisis of adoption trafficking. And I was just curious to know if you have received pushback from the adoption industry already about the work you're trying to do in terms of preventing sort of dismantling the corruption in adoption, especially as it pertains to international adoptions.
So my message is that the families, so they like to paint us as the dark side of adoption. And even my book, a nice book on my trip to Korea, I'm the dark side of adoption. I'm the enemy, even if it's a nice book, we're gonna get pushback. And with that book, I was at my very first book conference, and a woman came up to me and pointed her finger at my chest and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself for writing this book." so it's that kind of pushback that you get. It's very like personal, just disapproval from the good people of the world, you know, that I'm doing something wrong because I'm sharing a different take on adoption. And my message back is actually, we're the light side of adoption. You know, we are adoption. And we have both God and Mother Nature on our side. So they can push us as much as they want, but, you know, and at the end of the day, we just have to be proud of who we are and proud of our efforts. And if we just nudge people's perception of adoption just a little bit from our lifetime of just sharing our story, you know, if that's our punishment, then, you know, so be it. We have to take the punishment, you know, I mean, we're willing to take the punishment. So, but it's all, the pushback comes from reviews on Amazon. You know, it doesn't matter how you say, let's investigate adoption. You could say it nicely, and they're still going to push back on you. You can say it angrily, they're going to push back. You can say it any way. I've discovered, because I've been trying to figure out, how do I say it? And I've been trying to say it nicely for, you know, 20 years as I've been putting together this collection, which I call Rare Adoption Books for Adults, because there's so many books out there for children that paint adoption as beautiful and
life-saving.
Yeah, and so I've had to just accept the fact that no matter how I say, let's investigate adoption, they're going to call me the dark side of adoption, or us, the dark side of adoption. And it could be for the rest of our lives. So, I mean, I'm bitter, they say, I'm ungrateful. And
there was one review on the Americanized book that said they should have just left us in a box. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is.
Yes. Let's see. Actually.
Sarah? Sarah has a question.
Okay.
Which Sarah?
I'm here.
Here you are. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. This is just really delicious. This is really good. What have you guys thought about is the power behind all of this hate towards your humanizing adoption?
What's the power to me? I don't know what the power is that is resisting, but I know what our power is in trying to share. And I believe that, so my philosophy, our philosophy changed to include Eastern philosophy. And in Eastern philosophy, they recognize there's three main philosophers, and one is Lao Tzu. He was a poet. He lived like 2,500 years ago. He's the author of the Tao Te Ching, and he calls God the mother of the universe. He refers to God, but the thing is that we all, I believe, I mean, and I don't expect anyone else to believe this, that we all are worshiping the same God, or we all originate from the same essence, the same source, the same sacred energy, life force energy, the same power. And so we try to align with that source that is in all of us and all of nature. And that's where I draw my strength from in order to try to put this thing together. That's where, you know, my sister draws the strength from to.
I draw it from her.
to post and things like that. But we're all kind of guided under the same energy. So I don't think that I feel like beliefs divide us. So if it's the opposing self-righteous, like I'm right and you're wrong type of thinking, that is the biggest detriment to humanity. So if we all can say, we're all coming from, we all have a different perspective of what God is, but we all are part of the same source, then that's how I can keep going and keep doing, what
I think what the power of the other side basically is that these adoption industries, they make millions of dollars. They have to prey on women and they have to meet the demand. There's like, if you do Google search, it's like what, 50 to 100 searches a day on how to adopt a baby. And they got to look for the moms to meet that demand. And so they can't have adoption look bad at all. They have to continue to make it look beautiful in this beautiful, pristine wrapping paper. So when they see people that are questioning and because, being the administrator of Adoption, Truth, and Transparency, every single day I get messages, private messages of they're in pain, they need help, they don't know what to do. There's abuse going on in the family. They're not US citizens. There's so many issues. People are fighting to get their original birth certificates. Like every day, I'm bombarded with these issues that are happening. And if the industry would just stop doing what they're doing, and it's all about money. It's all about monetizing off of people's vulnerabilities. And so if we can kind of educate people to let them know this is what happens, the aftermath of adoption, then hopefully the demand will decrease. Because also there's no studies, which I think there should be studies on the abuse behind closed doors of adoptees. There's so much abuse. It's just crazy.
So the only thing we want to do is just balance the perspective of adoption, because it's been heavy on the side of pro-adoption. That's almost the only thing that's out there, and balance the scales. So at least there's another voice out there that questions it. And
or even understanding what the fallout is to the adoptee. We're not even in the equation. We have no identity.
Mhm.
That's why suicide, addiction.
And that's what I
Adoption
want
is
to do, is elevate the voices of mothers
and of adoptees.
Yeah.
Okay. I just can't find it hard to believe that something so big pushing back. What is the emotion, the feeling, that is doing that? It doesn't make sense. How do you not understand the fallout from this?
And there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of
fear?
fear, of truth, of adoptive mothers, because our mom, we couldn't even talk about adoption in our family, even though it was obvious that we're adopted. Like it was anything.
So bad that she didn't even allow us to look at the photo albums. I mean, that's how bad it was for her to have us to look at adoption. Like
What was her issue?
She had insecurities. She she was unable to get pregnant. Also, And so she had to kind of fill her family with other people's children. And
Well, and then also the loss of her own.
yeah, she had
a
a
stillborn.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
after like 12 years of not being able to get pregnant, and then she does, and then she had this perfect pregnancy, and then she gave birth, it was stillborn. And so, I mean, there's suspicion too there. It's like, well, she had this perfect birth, the baby came out, you know, that was
Our
dead.
adoptive father believes that the Catholic Church could have taken the baby
because they didn't even have a death certificate.
and processed it through the adoption channels after he learned about the scandals by the Catholic Church. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but because he didn't get to see the body of
The
the
child.
child.
So there was a lot of pain that she had, and then she adopted our brother, and then and kept that a complete secret, faked her pregnancy. And then she got pregnant with our brother David, and then the three of us, the adopted ones, were not needed anymore. So that's why she didn't really like us.
Oh. So it's human inadequacy that is destroying
That's a big one, I think.
adoptions.
Mhm.
Thank
So
you.
I think when somebody can't get pregnant too, they're often told, well, your next best option is adoption.
It's just, as American as apple pie. It's just, if you can't get pregnant, just adopt. There's no questions asked. Just, that's what you do. And so we want to be able to share stories that are typically hidden, but not have it called the dark side of adoption. It's just adoption.
Jennifer has a question, and then Robin after Jen.
So I have, I started coming out of the adoptee fog and the birth mother closet in 2012, 2013. And I really kind of threw myself into all of this. One of the first things I read was The Child Catchers: Rescue, Trafficking, and the New Gospel of Adoption by Catherine Joyce. And I'm like, no way, this can't possibly have happened. So I start researching this, and that was my first introduction into adoption is not what the church told me it was. It's not what the commercials tell you it is. It's not the propaganda put out by the people that are profiting off of this. And I just wondered kind of what your take is on Joyce's work that she did for the child catchers.
Yeah.
We actually met Joyce. She came to visit us a few years back, I think after her book came out.
I think she kicked the doors, the floodgates right open, and let the news out, this is what's going on. And it gave people like us room to be able to share without being the first ones to have to break the news, I guess. So it's nice to, and we kind of validate what her investigative journalism. It's like we validate it, like we are the stories behind her
writing.
Yeah, I mean, not us personally, but just the whole, adoption diaspora. So I like her book. Yeah.
Is she somebody that you are going to be thinking about bringing to your event?
Well, we have some other people that have been members in our Adoption, Truth, and Transparency group that I think are really important to have be speakers at the event.
And Catherine Joyce, I don't think she's adopted.
We really want to pick people that
That have had
live adoption or lives being a mother that lost their child because of adoption, because I think that's going to hold more power, and it's more meaningful for that person too, to have that person be able to speak their truth. And as compared to if Catherine Joyce, who wrote about it, but she doesn't live it. So that's our thoughts around, why we
But
choose.
I mean, it would be great. It would probably send an invite.
Yeah, she is invited.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, yes, adoptive voices need to be heard, but it is a beautiful thing when somebody who has no connections to adoption recognizes this and put.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Sorry, we had Dr. Corey Graves on, has no involvement immediately with adoption, but she has done research on Korean adoptees that are fathered by Black American soldiers and then brought into the US. I think there's a great value that means the rest of the world is starting to get it. So
Yeah.
just keep out there chugging away, and we've all got your back, and we'll help you however we can.
No, thanks.
Okay, Robin has another question, and then Kat is after Robin.
Okay, I wanted to speak about the reason that people don't want to hear the truth, and especially adoptive parents or prospective adoptive parents don't want to hear the truth about adoption, and the reason that they call us bitter and all of the things that you said. Every adoptee in any forum has heard that same boring thing. We're ungrateful. We well, I'm trying to think of all of the things that you said. Angry. Oh yeah, you just had a bad experience. You just had a bad experience. I won't even tell people my experience intentionally because I know that they're going to automatically discount whatever I say. And it's funny to me when they say, oh, you just had a bad experience. It's like, I didn't even tell you my experience. So where are you coming up with that? You're angry, you're bitter, you had a bad experience. So they automatically discount whatever you say because it doesn't fit the fact that they want to adopt, and their adoption is going to be different, and their kid is going to be different, and theirs is going to be better. It's like they put their blinders on, they put their earmuffs on, they don't want to hear it. I think also they don't want to believe that their adoption was rife with corruption. So you talk about religion being the push behind it. It wasn't just religion, it was social workers that really pushed the BSC. I'm a BSC adoptee, a baby scoop era from the mid 40s to the early 70s. So right around the time adoption went overseas, they started to run out of domestic babies and they started looking overseas, and they went to Vietnam, and then they went to Korea, and then they went to Guatemala, and they went to Russia and the Eastern Bloc. And now we're over in Africa searching for babies. They keep moving it. And what I found interesting a few years ago, and now I go back to try to find this, there was a US government website that actually talked about the corruption in Korea and Vietnam. They'd actually done a study, and they were actually putting out a caution to parents that were going over there, and they found out that those mothers had been lied to. Those parents were told, oh, it's like you're sending your kid overseas and like they're going to get an education and then they're going to send them back. There was actually that information. It was right there. Prospective adoptive parents don't want to believe that. They don't want to believe that stuff. Like the information is right in front of you and you don't want to see it. They still want this image that they're good people and that what they're doing is rescuing a child, saving a child, taking them out of poverty, taking them out of a bad country, a third world country, whatever. They will never let themselves believe the truth that we're trying to tell them. Even if you're like I don't know how we get around that. I don't know how we're going to get around that. But social workers and the BSE social workers decided that before the BSE, religion would teach a mother how to take care of her child, and an unwed mother, and get how to earn a living, being a housekeeper, cook, nanny, something like that. But once social workers stepped in, they decided that just being a single mother there's something wrong with you if you have a child out of wedlock. And, you know, the religion came right in on that and said, yes, we're behind that 100%. So religion definitely, organized religion definitely played a part in this. But it wasn't the only thing. And my adopters were not religious. So that was not a part of it for me, but I'm not discounting your experience at all. It just wasn't an issue in my adoption. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, I think.
Yeah,
There's so much, because there was so much that's been covered, and it's like my brain's firing all over the place.
Yeah, adoption has definitely become mainstream through the public and social, systems that are out there right now. That's why I say adoption is as American as apple pie, because it's not just the churches, the stadium preachers, the orphan Sundays.
It has become a religious thing way more now. Now they have this, I call it the new gospel of adoption. And to me, it's a perversion of the Bible, because it's something I never heard growing up. I took myself to church. My parents were not religious. I would go to whatever church was on the corner, or whatever, Protestant church was on the corner. I never heard anything about this, like, adoption that is the new gospel, where these churches are like going on missions to go other countries to try to adopt and take those kids out. It's like, what are you doing? It is a great way to build your church, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's just go take children away from other people and bring them here. But yeah, I don't get that at all, and it makes me crazy when I hear these people that are twisting the Bible for that purpose.
Yep.
In my opinion, but.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, Kat is next. She has her hand up.
Thanks. My name is Kat, and I am personally involved with these two beautiful women. One is my daughter-in-law and her lovely sister. And I have to say, I've known people who were adopted and it was a problem. And, there's a genetic thing for, how can I say it? The baby and the mom bind, they bond in the womb. And I'm not saying that you can never adopt, because there are circumstances when it's true, but I do believe that this kind of adoption has become, and always was, but it's just, we see it more, it's commercial. And people don't like to hear something that is upsetting, or that it involves them not getting what they want. And so it's so much easier to say, well, that's just not true, or you're all whiners and complainers, you're nasty and mean. I have never met, no, I have met many good people, and Jenette and Janine are the most loving and caring people I know. And to get through what they got through is a testament to the human spirit, and everyone here gets to do their part, including myself, to continue to speak out. Nothing in life is ever perfect. There's always more improvement in ourselves and others. And so I think that that hate stuff really is just people who don't want to hear or feel like they might miss out on something if you keep talking and speaking the truth, instead of hey, we need to change this. So I just feel honored that I know them and that I am involved a little bit to be able to witness the things that have happened to young mothers and to their children that have to be adopted. The one thing that I find interesting is there's this altruistic thing, which is why I think it's attached to religion. Oh, we're saving this child. So, and I know it was Janine and Jenette that brought this up, but to me one time, if they're saving the child, why don't they put all that money that they have to pay for to all these agencies down the line and help the family to come out of poverty, or help the mother to be able to have people to support her to raise her child? So enough out of me, but I just want to say I'm really grateful to be here and have heard all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Well, thanks, Kat.
Thank you, Kat.
And thank you for being so supportive all the time and, you know, so receptive and going to every place that we've, you know, been and, you know, just always being positive and helpful. And we really appreciate it. And we appreciate you too.
It's so important to have that support. Mimi, did you have a question? You want to take yourself off mute?
Okay, there it is. I just wanted to tell you guys a story, something that happened to me several years ago. It's probably like 12 years ago or so. I was when I was still working, I worked in HR for many, many years, and I had gone to a 3-day training, an HR certificate program, and it was a small group of people. I think there might have been 15 people in the class. And when I first walked into the room, the lady that was giving the class had a big screen up in the front, and there was this really cute little blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy, looked like he was about 3 years old, on a little tricycle, and that was her screensaver. And my gut just kind of lurched, because she was definitely in her mid-50s or so. And there was just something that told me, this kid is adopted. So of course, sure enough, she started the class out telling her whole story about how this was her son that she adopted from Belarus, and how, she just adored him, and he was gorgeous. And he, apparently, when she started the adoption process, the mom was trying to keep her son. And she was very, very proud of the fact that she won, the mom lost, and she got to keep this little boy. And then throughout these 3 days of this training, adoption kept coming up. When we would have lunch, because we all had lunch as a group, people would talk about it, know how wonderful it is, and everybody had a story about adoption. And I am just saying, I was going to cuss, but I'm going to refrain myself. But it's like, I can't even go to a damn training without adoption having to come up, And I just kind of kept quiet. And then one day at lunch, somebody told a story about how they knew someone who's, was going to adopt a baby. And then the birth mother changed her mind, and how horrible it was. And it was so sad, and how selfish of that birth mother. And everybody had a story to tell. Even the freaking waitress had to chime in. Everybody had an opinion about, how wonderful adoption is, how horrible these birth mothers are. They change their mind and keep their babies. And it was just, it just kind of overshadowed the whole course. And at the very end, when we were, leaving for the day, I kind of left my stuff on my table and went to the bathroom. And when I came back, she was alone in the class and, cleaning up. And I decided to, kind of come out of my shell and tell her how uncomfortable I had been for these few days, listening to everybody's opinion of birth moms and how wonderful adoption is, and how wonderful it is that she won this kid from the birth mom. And I just said it was very difficult. And I explained to her, I said, you don't always know who your audience is. So perhaps it would be a good idea not to bring these things up. There could have been adoptees sitting in this room. There was definitely me that was extremely uncomfortable. And I was being very kind. I wasn't being defensive. I was just really trying to explain things to her about how adoption can be very difficult. He's young and the challenges she might come up against. And I mentioned, Nancy's book. And I said, you might want to read The Primal Woman. Oh yeah, I've heard about that, but no. And she was from the Bay Area too. So Nancy was in the area. So we kind of she was interested in, and, she asked me a few questions about my experience, and she apologized, and she was very kind. And I said, well, I think the important thing to realize is that someday he may grow up and he may hear his story and want to know about where he came from. And after all, adoption should be about the child, and his well-being and what his needs are. And she looked at me and she went, oh no. She goes, this is totally about me. She goes, this is something I wanted. Maybe someday he'll have questions, but right now, this is all about me. And I just said, okay, bye. And I left. But that's kind of the attitude of so many adoptive parents, and this poor little boy that's from this country that he may never be able, especially what's going on in Belarus right now, he may never be able. And I figured this kid must be at least around 18 or so now, so I think about him all the time and how this attitude was, and how we as birth parents or moms, just period, we walk in this world and those are the things we hear all the time about how horrible we are for loving our children and wanting our children, so. And anyways, I just wanted to tell that little story about another international adoption and the selfish adoptive mom.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of when I was first doing my research into intercountry adoption, and I had only heard the positive responses of adoption when, the child is being adopted into the new family. And there was this newspaper article that I came across that was like from late 1950s or early 1960s, and this journalist was actually watching as the children were being taken from the airplane and processed through into the line of new parents, and the investigator was just concerned about the babies. I wonder what's going to happen. Is this really the right thing to do? And I was like, wow, that's amazing. I was like, this is the most amazing person to think about how this adoption, this exchange is going to affect and influence the child into, their new life. I think it's very progressive. And so we hope that, as we have discussions on adoption and we talk about the additional burdens that the entire family faces, that when it's time for, say, a young mom who's surprised about her adoption, or her pregnancy, then she can hear our voices or that side and say, oh, okay, so, this could happen to this, psyche of her child. And does she really want that? And if they have an informed choice, then, you know, they'll make a different decision.
Right, right. Thanks, guys.
So
Mimi. Yeah, we're winding down on the time, and we have some time for just one more question or closing comments from the two of you.
So my sister has about a few more books that I just quickly want to show. Should I do this? So the Power of Isolation.
This
That
is a
one?
book on meditation.
On meditation. And then this one is Master Adoption, how claim your authentic power. So if you know of an adoptee that to help them with their adoption.
Just to see adoption from a human rights perspective, from seeing the family as a unit, that they belong to a unit, and that they have the right to have a curiosity about their biological family if they want, or their biological culture.
So I thought that if I may just read one paragraph of her millions of books.
Please go right ahead.
Okay, so this is from Master Adoption. As you read Master Adoption, you will see that you are not alone. You are here for a reason, and you are a part of a global movement. Many of us have become independent and even rebellious souls. We tend to take the bull by the horns and lead ourselves. My research and writing represents my awareness into the land of adoption and my evolutionary process through it to where we are today on the topic, advocating for innate human rights. My hope is that we, as a unified collective, can make history together. This particular book was composed to validate the right that you have as a human being. The purpose of this writing is to demonstrate how the modern day adoption practice has mastered humanity in the way that it has covertly re-engineered and rearranged families while ignoring our right to know and have access to documents that pertain to us. This book is for those of us who have had enough of living by the pro-adoption ideology assigned to us by authorities, and if we so wish, strive to reclaim the innate right to know and have access to our origins.
I think one person read that book, and it was my sister.
So get a copy, okay? She'd like more than one reader for that one.
Actually, it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's great. That was a great reading. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap for us. And we just want to say thank you to both of you and give you a round of applause, everybody, for joining us tonight. It was great to have both of you on. We'd like to support you in any way that we can. So I know we'll be hearing more from you in the future about the upcoming symposium, and you can keep us informed as well. And we've just really enjoyed having you on Happy Hour this evening. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
It was great.
Jen, did we have any final comments or for next week's guest? Oh, there we go. Okay, we're going to have Michelle join us from Baby Be Brave. She's a Romanian adoptee. So we're going to learn her story and a little bit more about her next week. And then we have our support groups with David's first. Okay, David's is the Adoptee Paths to Recovery. Jim, the upcoming dates on those are?
It's the 14th and the 28th. I dropped information and the link to it in the chat if you're interested in that. And he's coming up on his 1 year of presenting this support group. So, and then we also have Dr. Joyce. She's coming up with her support group on the 28th. So after dealing with our families at Christmas, we may need to talk to Dr. Joyce.
And she'll be joining us on the 28th. So yeah. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. All right, well, everybody have a great week. We hope to see many of you back here again next Friday night at 7 p.m. EST. Blessings to all of you. It was great to see you.
Hey, Marcie,
Everybody have a
one
great
thing
week.
before you check out, Brian is still here. He has an event tonight. If there's still time, Brian, how do they get to see you?
Yeah, Brian.
Okay. Yeah, in an hour and a half, Mammoth Lakes Repertory Theater, which is a theater that I've worked at several times. They've been doing a lot of stuff virtually, obviously, and they've decided to host at Ghost Kingdom tonight at 7 o'clock Pacific time. It's just a donation, and really, if you can't pay anything, you don't need to. You can still watch it. It's mammothLakesRep.org, MAMMOTHLAKESORG. God, I hope I did that right. .org. So yeah, and I have it on my Facebook feed and Instagram if you want to look that up.
I just dropped the link in.
Well, thank you for that promotion.
Yes.
Appreciate it. But I loved being here. Thank you so much, Janine and Jenette. You guys are amazing, doing wonderful things. Keep it up. And you definitely have all of our support, I'm sure. But
Wonderful.
behind you all the way. Thank you so much. Mwah.
Thanks, Brian. We love the Ghost Kingdom.
And we love the Vance Twins.
Okay, that's a wrap for me.
See everyone next Friday.